New York Fire Department. Well, let's bring in Beth now, American journalist Beth Gardner joining us for the papers this morning. Good morning once more, Beth, and welcome. And very disparate coverage of the 9/11 commemoration in the papers. But
yes.
The Sunday Times piece is going with the sort of human detail, the ghosts of 9/11 as it describes them.
Yes, that's right. Well, you know, there's a lot of talk about this memorial now in place at the Ground Zero site, these tremendous reflecting pools in the footprints of where the towers were. And underground, beneath them, near them, is going to be the Museum of 9/11. This Times article is focusing in on some of the personal artifacts that are going to be in there, items that were either found in the rubble of the Trade Center towers or donated by family members.
And it's that sort of minutiae that really tells the human story.
Yes, I think so.
Dollar notes from wallets and that sort of thing, and the remains.
Yeah, well, you know, we're also familiar with those horrible television images of the planes crashing into the towers, but of course it's the lives that were lost inside. You know, as always, it's sometimes easier to sort of think about one individual life, one human being, rather than thousands.
And celebrate that life as well.
Yes.
And the article looking at, you know, how people deal with it differently. That for some, you know, those articles are a reminder of the loss and horror, and for others, it's a bridge to a memory of that loved one.
Some of the families couldn't bear to even reclaim the items, and some have treasured them. There was actually a sort of poignant story about a survivor of the Trade Centers who came in and donated his suit, his tattered suit, that he'd been wearing that day.
Yeah.
He had carried a disabled woman down the steps, and his way of coping was he had barely talked about it for 10 years. But this museum and these you know,
bringing it out
small items had provided a way for him to kind of
Well, there's an interesting take then in the Observer, Francis Fukuyama, and basically the legacy less significant than we feared. This is
well, you know, there was a lot of talk on that day and in the months afterwards about how the world had changed and America had changed, and Francis Fukuyama, the conservative historian's making the point that you know, in fact, the rise and the battle against terrorism and Islamic extremism has not been the main trend, the most important trend of the last 10 years. Talking about things like the rise of China, that in fact in 50 years' time we're going to look back at the first half of this century.
Which was already in place 10 years ago.
Sure.
That engine, if you like, had started up.
Yeah, and in fact within the Obama administration, in fact you read talk about, some of his advisors talk about the tremendous detour that the U.S. has taken in the last 10 years through the Middle East, when we should have been focusing on China and India. And despite talking about it, they still can't get away from that detour.
Yeah, he said he wanted the focus to switch to the Pacific, didn't he? And there was a lot of criticism at the time.
Yes, that's true. And, you know, you can see from the economic problems that the U.S. and indeed the entire Western world are facing today, that the rise of Asian economic powers is, you know, by some measures a greater threat.
And a very obvious manifestation of that, Sunday Times reflecting on the theft in metals, this sort of commodities boom as a result of the growth of China and elsewhere.
Well,
so we've got plastic art coming in.
This is quite a story. Yeah, Blackpool is one of the councils that is considering replacing a stolen statue with a plastic replica. There's similar concerns in other parts of the country. There's been a tremendous rise in thefts of materials like copper and other metals, costing billions of pounds, or at least £1 billion to the UK economy.
Even a bus shelter's been stolen.
Bus shelters,
how they
internet
quite
connection,
manage that.
telephone wires, and as you're saying, this can be traced back in many ways to the rise of some of these Asian economic powers. There's a tremendous pressure now on commodities, the demand for metals. These countries in Asia
are our lives bare.
They're building and growing, and they need commodities. You know, whether it's the price of oil or something like this.
But presumably, it will be a lot cheaper for people like councils to make plastic statues. So there's a silver lining.
Cheaper, yes.
Unless you start recycling plastic, if it becomes more expensive. And very quickly, tell us why fans are planning to rush to the US bookshops at midnight tonight.
Well, I thought this was really interesting. There's a new trilogy being published by the Japanese author Haruki Murakami. I loved this story because in the age of the internet and all of this, people are still reading novels. And in the age of
proper books
and the iPad and the Kindle, they're going to bookstores to buy books on paper. and
Yeah.
carry them home and read them.
So you're like me, you actually like opening a book and feeling the paper
yeah, a little
and
bit.
smelling and
A little bit old-fashioned, but
Absolutely.
yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that, is there? Beth, thank you very much indeed on joining
Thank
us
you.
today on this important day, of course. Thank you very much. You're watching Sunrise this Sunday morning and on